Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of the Computer America Show. We've got a terrific
show. 1 minute until showtime.
Terrific show planned for you. In the first hour, Dariush Derakhshani is joining us. He's our newest correspondent. We're going to be talking about computer graphics and some of the software that is being used for graphics applications and movies and TVs and things that you can use as well. And in the second hour we're going to have Corey Gallagher is going to be joining us live from the E3 convention. We had Josh Boykin with us on Tuesday, and today we're going to be joined in the second hour by Corey Gallagher, who's on the floor of the E3 convention with some interesting insights and reporting on what's coming out. So sit back, relax, as we bring to you 2 hours of the Computer America Show right here in 15 seconds.
Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting live, it's America's longest-running national radio talk show on computers, Computer America, hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. Look for Craig's weekly column in your favorite newspaper. This show is being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. Keep it here for technology news, computer products, guest interviews, and your phone calls. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello, and welcome into the Computer America Show. It's the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. Computer America is heard around the world and coast to coast. And I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Computer America Show. And as always, we have a terrific show planned for you today. In the second hour, we're going to be joined by Corey Gallagher. He is out at the E3 convention. He's one of our correspondents here to Computer America. As I'm sure you're aware of yesterday's show, we had Josh Boykin, again on the floor from E3, talking about all the cool things. We continue that reporting with Corey. He'll give us an update as to what he's seeing out there. It should be a very interesting hour, and that'll be coming to you in hour 2. But in the first hour, we're going to be joined by one of our newest Computer America correspondents, Dariush Derakhshani. He is a computer graphics expert specialist, and he is here as our graphics correspondent. We're going to be talking about things like 3ds Max, Maya, Blender, how computer graphics software, how it's being used in the graphics industry and professionals, movies, by people like you and me. It's going to be a very interesting conversation. He'll be joining us shortly. In the meantime, if you have a comment or question for him or myself or Ben, give us a call at 347-884-8881. That's 347-884-8881. That number will get you on, and it will get you through, okay? If you don't want to get on the air, but you still have a question or a comment for us, head over to our website, ComputerAmerica.com. In the upper right-hand corner of any page on our website, it says submit a question. It's a link. Click it, okay? It'll take you to a question submission page. You can type in whatever you like, hit the submit button, and Ben and I will see what you've typed instantaneously. It's a wonderful thing. The other thing you can do also, and we encourage you to do, is watch our show. Wait a minute, I thought you were a radio broadcast. Yes, we are, but it's the 21st century, and we bring to you live video streaming of our show. Okay, we've been doing it for a very long time. Head over to ComputerAmerica.com again, and on any page, the menu bar there, it says Show Lounge. Just click on that. It'll take you to our live video streaming page. You'll be joined to the show already in progress, and you can see Ben and you can see Dariush. You'll be able to see both of them. And also, Ben has the technology to display websites, links, videos, movies, that type of thing. So you can see what we're talking about as well as hear what we're talking about. It makes for a truly interactive experience. Again, everything we do here at Computer America is reflected on our website, ComputerAmerica.com. It truly is the internet home of our radio broadcast. 347-884-8881. Anything else you want to talk about before we get Dariush on, Ben?
Anything else? No. Looking forward again to hour 2 with Mr. Corey Gallagher as we are going to be talking about E3, and E3, as you all know, is still going on. It's going on for another day. So, plenty of launch titles and computer games to talk about, and that is, of course, my favorite thing to talk about. So, stick around for that. But in the first hour here, nope, I believe we are ready for Dariush.
Well, Derakhshani and his wife, by the way, have published close to 24 books over the past 9 years on Maya, 3ds Max, and the computer graphics industry. Now, every third Wednesday of the month, Dariush now appears on the Computer America show as our graphics correspondent to discuss the latest in computer graphics. Dariush, welcome into Computer America. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys doing?
Well, we're just doing
dandy.
Doing dandy.
Great.
So,
good to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for our listeners who may have not heard from you before, why don't you just tell a little bit what your background is in computer graphics?
Oh, sure. My background started a long time ago on silicon graphics machines, doing 3D animation. That's what I went to school for in film school at USC, and I've been doing visual effects pretty much ever since. I've been a visual effects supervisor for hundreds of commercials at this point, number of TV shows and a couple of movies as well. So I've been around computers that have to handle some pretty intensive tasks, and I love building my own machines, so I usually build them to handle that kind of stuff.
Okay, well, very cool. Now, since you've been around for a while, I'm sure the answer is yes, but maybe you can expand a little bit more on it than just a yes, and that is, you've obviously seen some amazing changes with the software tools and the hardware as well, but especially the software tools that allow people to do today what they're doing today that they could not have done maybe even as little as 5 years ago. There's some amazing increases in not only computing power, but in the software behind that computing power. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Absolutely. There was a really big movement towards desktop. When I started in, I guess, around 96, 95, 96, a lot of the software was geared towards professional workstations on SGIs, silicon graphics machines. These things were in the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and out of the reach for people in the general populace. And I guess about 10, 11, 12 years ago, something like that, they started porting some of these programs over to Windows NT, and that was the big shift, and people could start getting them on some pretty souped up NT machines that still cost $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, but it started bringing it more down to the democratic level where people could use it more often. Nowadays, there are a lot of different 3D packages available. Some of them are absolutely free to use, like Blender, and the fact that you can run them on a $700, $800, $900 laptop even is a really big step forward, and has really democratized the use of CG and computer graphics, so people can do whatever they want, animations, add visual effects to their home movies, create their own, productions with a nice digital camera. You can make your own films, have all sorts of characters and effects and stuff like that. So it's really spread to everybody. Really can get their hands on it.
Really, and we're seeing continued improvements. I mean, things that are coming from NVIDIA. Graphics like the Pascal architecture that we're beginning to see appear
with the 1080 and the 1070.
Yeah, with some of these graphics cards.
Right. Yeah, we've actually done a little bit of testing on the 1080 for hardware rendering to the GPU, and it's still pretty early out of the gate to tell, but it's a much more efficient card and does at least a little bit better than the 980 GTX does, but it's a lot more efficient, uses a lot less power, and is very competitive with the professional style cards, the Quadro cards. So instead of spending, close to 10 grand on that, you can set up a really nice gaming machine and still be able to do a lot of animation and 3D work on that 970, 960, 980, or the new Pascal ones that are just coming out.
Yeah, well, the Titan X was supposedly until recently was really like considered to be the top of the line.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
in some ways it still is.
It is. Yeah.
And I know that's the one that Ben actually has, and still he complains that it's not fast.
Still looking for my second one.
Right, right. Well, yeah, I would SLI two of them before running out and getting the 1080. I think the jury still may be out on the 1080 and how well it performs, unless you're into efficiency. Definitely the Pascal chip, that 1080 card is much less power hungry than the Titan X. Performance-wise, jury's still out as far as some of the limited testing that I've seen, as only being, maybe 3 to 5% faster in some GPU renders. But again, it comes less than half the power usage, I want to say.
Wow. Well, we've said it sounds like that we've set up new fans in the living room with Ben's machine. You can hear these fans.
Oh no, that was something different. And I don't know if you've ever run into this, Dariush, but I had a problem a little while ago. And listeners, if you have this problem, this might be you. Whenever I was running certain games on certain settings or doing something that was processor or graphics intensive, my computer would just like freeze up. Like the sound would kind of stutter, and then everything would just freeze, and I would have to force restart. Well, whatever the controlling chip that does it for the cooling and the fans, like it didn't kick on at the right time. So like even though I was using a lot of processing power and the heat was climbing and climbing and climbing, it wouldn't kick the fans on like at all until it was too late, and it would shut itself down. So I got this program. I want to say it's like Open Resource Monitor or something like that. Open Hardware Monitor. There we go. And set all my fans to 100% all the time. Like don't even wait for it to get a certain threshold. And now, of course, it sounds like I'm in a wind turbine, but hey, it works.
Yeah, it's better than burning your computer down.
No, absolutely.
And one more thing. I mean, heck, while we're being off topic, about hardware, real quick. I don't know how much of what you've been listening to from AMD, because AMD is also in the field of graphics cards, despite what NVIDIA would like you to think. But the two new cards that they revealed, though, or at least the one that everyone's talking about, I think it's like the RX 480, I want to say, and they're going for a lower price point. And I kind of want to get your feelings on how competitive AMD is going to be if they're trying to go for like the sub $200 price point.
I think AMD is really quite a good company. I mean, they do a lot of good. They put out a lot of good hardware, and I think they're most competitive in the lower to mid-range graphics cards. I think they do well there. The high end and the professional, again, it's debatable where they fall. NVIDIA has constantly been taking the crown over the last several years on the best graphics card and the most power that they bring. But every now and then, AMD sneaks in and tops that. They haven't in the last few years, but I do notice that price to performance ratio, AMD does really well, and they're very very competitive in that part of the market.
Right. Okay. So and that's all I wanted to get, was because again they came out with the new graphics cards, and it's like, oh, we have one at like the 199 price point and another one at like the 139 or something like that. But from what I've been hearing, the power that they get is actually pretty comparable, not to the 980, but to like the 970.
I think they're trying to position the 480 against the GTX 980 card. I don't know. I haven't had one in my hands to test it out and see how it does with some of the benchmarks I use, including 3D Mark. But that's kind of, they're taking a swing at the high end again, where they haven't been as successful in the last year or two, I want to say. But I've certainly had my had a lot of success with AMD cards before with the Fire Pro line, especially the low to mid range. They have a great price to performance ratio.
Okay, well, that's good to
Perfect.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
good. No, indeed. And we may, of course, time allowing, we may even come back to some of the stuff we've been talking about at E3, and that includes the fact that the Xbox announced the Project Scorpio, and PlayStation, of course, has Project Neo, I think they're calling it, which is like the PlayStation 4.5. So we may even come back and touch on that after we, of course, talk about all these great software options that I think you've lined up for us.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, as I was mentioning, on your home computer, on your kitchen computer, you can run these great apps. And one favorite free app is called Blender, and a lot of people do quite a lot of very interesting work. And if you go online and start looking out for Blender artwork, you're going to notice some really high quality images. And Blender does a really nice job of an overall package where it has some animation, some rendering, modeling, and texturing, and so forth. So you can complete an entire production if you want coming out of Blender. So it's a very interesting package. The fact that it's pretty much open source and it's free, there's a lot of great documentation, a lot of user-created content to help you learn it, as well as some published books out there. But lots and lots of people get into 3D through something like Blender.
and again,
Oh,
because it's
and correct me, but I've seen these animations, and there are a bunch of different ones, but it's like people make these 3D rendered, water splashing in an invisible box, and they have like a physics kind of thing going on. Like, is that kind of what Blender is used for, or is Blender just 3D stills?
No, Blender can do some animation. I don't know how well it can handle dynamics like liquid effects or like splashing water and stuff like that. Um, I think it'll let you do some of that, but I believe it definitely has animation and rigging. You can see rigging is basically setting up a character to be animatable. Taking a model like arms and hands and feet, legs, and all that kind of stuff, and putting bones in them so you can rotate shoulders and elbows and stuff like that. So Blender has a pretty decent rigging and animation tool set, so you can take your models and start animating them. As far as doing that one image that we saw with the splashing water, I'm not entirely sure that was a dynamic simulation in Blender. I'm not
No,
familiar
no, that
enough
was
with
just a
it.
still, right?
That may have been modeled out or may have been created in another package, but I can tell you, the professionals use RealFlow most of the time to do liquid simulations, and Houdini is another professional choice. These are fairly expensive, fairly complicated, but I get the question a lot from people on Facebook or just in conversations about what should I learn? What do I want to get into? How do I start? And it comes down to what do you want to do? Is this something you want to pursue professionally? Is this something you want to get into for helping create games, become a game artist, or become a visual effects artist for TV or film? It really depends on what your end result is. But the two packages that stand out the most in those arenas are 3ds Max, which has been around a very long time, back in the MS-DOS days, and Maya. Those are both used very heavily professionally for creating scenes, models, characters, animations, special effects, things like that. I
well,
would.
let
I'm
me
sorry. Go ahead.
just interrupt here with Blender. You see, I'm on the website right now, and it says amazing simulations. Is whether you need a crumbling building, rain, fire,
Ah,
smoke, fluid, cloth, or full-on destruction, you get, and they offer something called fluid, which is realistic water and fluid simulation. Smoke, billowing smoke with flames and scene interaction. Hair, beautiful wafts of hair that blow in the wind and interact with collisions. I remember when Sony, they came out with what was the name of the movie? Was
Final Fantasy?
What? Final Fantasy. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That seems the one that you like to reference the most.
They spent over $1 million just on the girl's hair. I mean, that was back when they came out with that movie, and now here, they have hair, cloth, amazing realistic cloth simulations, rigid body physics makes any object destructible and collidable, particles for creating things like rain, sparks, and shrapnel. Again, this is all in Blender, and these are all amazing. Yeah. So they're listing. They have a picture of a glass with ice cubes and water flowing in it. I don't know if they can. Ben, I think is actually showing it on there.
Right. Yeah. This is the one I was talking about, and turns out you can do stuff like this. Although, just a quick YouTube search shows that it's not the preferred method. Like Blender can definitely do something like this, but there are other ones, like you were saying earlier, that do a little bit better.
But they cost money, right? And the point
That's true.
The point of this is that Blender is open source. It's free. And look what you can do. I mean,
yeah, that's really true, and I gotta say it's come a really long way in the last several years that it's been out. I would agree it's probably not the easiest or the best to use for something, especially at a professional level. You're going to be using maybe something out of Maya or probably RealFlow or Houdini. But the fact that it's there and people can use it and get familiar with it is a really good step towards somebody being able to create their own animation and create their own films, because that's a lot of fun to do.
Yeah, now it's like anything else. The old saying, "You get what you pay for." Yeah, I mean, Bill, these are some amazing simulations that have been showing us, but when you watch the water, at least in the one that I'm watching there, you're watching it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it looks like water, but something in the back of your head says, it's not quite real. Something keeps, it looks realistic, but if I saw that, I would think. Whereas when today, with some of the real, you can look at that and you can't tell. They might as well photograph a container filling up with water. I mean, it looks.
Right.
So
a lot of that has to do with the artists behind it as well. I know for a fact that simulations like that, especially liquids, fire, smoke, they are very, very difficult to simulate. And the tool has to have somebody amazing behind it to create something that is photoreal. And that takes years of study and practice to really get to understand it.
So would you?
But I agree. I mean,
say
it's free, but it does amazing stuff, especially for the price.
Would you say then it's also up to the artist? I mean, that's why we have different levels of artists. I mean, you look at a painting and you can look at one painting and say, "Oh my God, it looks like a photograph," and the other one says, and you look at it and you go, "Well, it's sort of like a photograph," and it's directly the talent of the artist who created that still image. Does that talent translate over into animations like this and simulations?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Matter of fact, if people are interested in getting into actual animation, like Pixar stuff, like Shrek, or character animation, the more you can draw with a pencil and paper, the more that talent of being able to recreate figure animation and character animation is developed. So there's a direct correlation between traditional art making skills and animating. It's pretty important to keep both things up. And then there's understanding the technical simulations and software like this. The more you understand about mathematics and modeling and things like that, the more you're able to simulate physical effects like that.
Okay, so the example that Ben just showed now, are you saying that somebody had to draw that frame by frame before animating it, or is a lot of that?
Oh, no. I'm just saying that the more you understand about how to draw, and the more you understand about just traditional art, how to see something and be able to draw it, the better you'll become as a digital artist as well.
All right, but you don't. So you don't have to draw each frame realistically. Then the software will.
No, no, no. That's just a correlation between how you see things and how you're able to represent them. When you're using packages like this, the setup is quite different.
Okay. But yeah, it's amazingly impressive, and the fact that you're
Yeah.
doing this on a standard machine, even a laptop. I mean, rendering used to take weeks, to do a simple scene, and now with the multiple cores and processors and graphics and computers can do act as a rendering engine. They're much more affordable, and but anybody can do them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, rendering can still take a long time depending on what you've got, but essentially, and we can talk more about this, of course. The better CPU and the more memory you have, the better you're able to run these simulations and then render them out into images.
Right. Now,
Yes.
still, you would agree, I was thinking the holy grail of computer graphics, though, are people. Because
Absolutely.
there's
Absolutely.
something about people that.
Yeah, and I hope that never ever changes. Otherwise, we'll have Skynet and we'll be overrun by Terminators. But essentially, we want people to realize that artists and craftspeople are behind everything that they see in the movies, and all these animations are created by people that work really, really hard on creating these effects and writing the software and then running it and saying, hey, this doesn't look quite right. I'm going to adjust this. I'm going to adjust that. And there's quite a lot of love that goes into creating this stuff. And
Right. But not only that aspect of people, but the other point that I wanted to make is creating animations of people. The face, that
Yes.
seems one of the most difficult things for us to simulate and look real. I mean, some of the games that are coming out, it used to be that the people would talk and their lips would move very primitively, and they really couldn't. It didn't look like they were talking.
Well, because it was done like traditional animation, where they had different, and of course I'm just pulling off South Park, but they have different positions of the lip and of the lips and teeth, and they had an animator sit there and kind of with a mirror and go, okay, his lips are supposed to look like this, then this, then this, and then the video game characters, they would animate them so that their lips move like that.
Right, but now with technology.
But now they actually use cameras to capture how their lips move, and they just
Well, it doesn't go beyond that. I thought that they're getting the software now, so literally with the spoken word, that the computers can do a lot of that effort in making lips of animated characters match up to spoken words.
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of advancement with software that'll let you do that. There's facial capture technology, which is what Ben was just talking about, where you put dots and tracking points all over a face.
Yeah.
But it still comes down to people animating on top of that. I mean, you're right. The Holy Grail is to get people to look and move in animation like they do in real life, and there's what's called the uncanny valley. We talked about this a while ago on the show, that describes this gap between what we're able to create or recreate as looking really human and what people actually accept as actually looking human. And the closer we get to that acceptance of people, the more repulsed people become. So if you have a character that looks close to human but isn't quite human, somebody's going to be repulsed by it. They're going to be like, ooh, there's something really weird and gross and sort of zombie-like about this thing that's trying to look human. And crossing that gap is it's a multifaceted effort.
It's the reason why we don't strike up conversation all the time with mannequins in clothing stores. You can't get close. You got to get almost dead on.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
I have a computer American confession. I'm going to tell you this now. I've been saving it for the longest time, but I think now is the appropriate time.
You hit on a mannequin in a store because she was wearing some wonderful.
No.
Okay.
No. Ben is actually a computer rendering. He doesn't really exist. It's just amazing.
Don't do that, Dave.
It looks pretty good.
He looks really good too.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, Craig spent almost no time working on my chiseled features, but I don't know if Dariush, you saw the Death Stranding, I guess like an intro video, but of course it's all computer graphics, so it ties in loosely. And it's it's all about a guy who goes through these weird series of events, but it wasn't the best animation I've ever seen. Like the hair to me seems a little bit off, but I mean just like the level of detail that went into creating like a full-blown guy just for this one sequence. I mean, it was like the movements were so bang on that like stills they can do pretty well for humans. Like they can get pores down, they can get dirt under the nails. They did a really good job about that. But to see it all in motion, sometimes you get that little bit of a jitter because in animation it's not just the rendering, but they also use motion capture, and the motion capture has that little bit of jitter. But they did a really good job of the motion of this guy.
We're at the bottom of the hour. We're going to take a little break. Dariush Derakhshani is our computer graphics correspondent. We're going to continue on with him. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Sometimes disaster strikes. Data can be lost due to many different reasons. Accidental reformatting, power spikes, virus attacks. Zero Assumption Recovery provides a suite of highly effective and thorough data recovery software for Windows operating systems. ZA is suitable for home users and small businesses who need a powerful data recovery solution for Windows and Linux file systems.
Go to z-a-recovery.com.
Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PTA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? Not so great, huh? It's a fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they are available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com.
Creepy. Not even Siri would talk to him. Hi, Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America. This time, the ORMPV 5-door mailbox and parcel vault. You know, if we're reviewing it, not to expect an ordinary mailbox, this 85-pound beast is an OR Products ORMPV Black Classic Shadow 5-door mailbox. It stands more than 4 feet high with an arch-top galvanized steel body, stainless steel hardware, and a cast aluminum face. The top of the front looks like a standard round-top mailbox. Underneath is a parcel box with trap doors inside that drop parcels to a locked vault lower compartment. The rear, away from the street, has a second locked door for the parcel vault, plus a rear door on the mailbox, so no more need to go out into the street just to get your mail. Bottom line, the ORMPV 5-door mailbox and parcel vault is built to endure and keep deliveries secure. Marty Winston, News Tips Bulletin for Computer America.
Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 33 minutes past the hour as we continue on with Darius Derakhshani. And yeah, we're talking all about 3D graphics, 3D rendering, software that can help you do this at home, because really there are a lot of great free solutions to get you started if you are so inclined. And we were just talking about. Well, I was just droning on about the new Death Stranding one, where Hideo Kojima did a really good job, or at least his animators and his studios did a good job of getting the movements of a person right, because that is also another part of animation. You can't just have it, you just can't have your riggings look good. They have to move naturally as well. And I'm going to segue that real quick into one other, because I think some of the best CGI I've seen in theaters just came out last weekend before that. The Warcraft movie, and I'm wondering if you had a chance to see that one, Darius.
Yeah, that looked pretty nice. They did a lot of great work with the characters. The skin materials and shading and the lighting looked really good. The animation was quite nice as well. They did a really nice job with it.
I think if
you know it's good when the orcs look more real than the humans.
Than the humans, yeah, right.
If you think that the software that is used to create it in most movies now, they actually get credits. If you sit through the end of the movie, it'll tell you you can see what was used to develop a lot of it.
I'm sure it was done in Autodesk. Everything's done in Autodesk.
What was I know Autodesk was I think when we had Ralph Bond from Autodesk on, I think he said that they were involved in that project. I don't know if you know. I mean, do you know exactly which graphics packages were used for that particular?
Exactly, no. But I'm sure Maya was a big one. I'm sure they've used ZBrush for a lot of sculpting and modeling. Pretty sure they've probably used a bunch of RealFlow for some simulations, and they've probably used 3ds Max as well. Most of these studios are platform independent, meaning they have lots and lots of different platforms. Rarely will you go into a big studio like that and they're just locked into one program. And a lot of big studios, like Digital Domain, for example, they customize a lot of software around these packages.
Well, that was my question. I mean, are gone are the days. I mean, it used to be, when Lucas came out and with the Star Wars, they customized everything, what little that they had at the time. Are the big graphics developers, movie companies now using standard packages like Maya, or are they modifying them in some way to make it theirs, or what?
They definitely are. The majority of them are using off-the-shelf programs like Maya and Max. But for sure they are modifying quite a lot. Like Sony ImageWorks has a lot of their own proprietary programs that plug into one of these standards, or Maya would plug into one of their packages. So there's a lot of customization that happens. The larger studio you are, the more often you'll find that proprietary packaging. But it's not like it was 15 years ago where a company would have its own modeling package or its own animation package, because a lot of these things that are off the shelf now address those needs really well. Actually, some of them, like the Foundry's Nuke, came out of Digital Domain's own proprietary program. So some of these actually come from the studio and become packages. And a lot of the stuff that we see in Maya and Max now, as plugins or enhancements or improvements or additions, have also been at least inspired, if not come directly from studios creating their own tools to help customize what they're doing.
There's another factor here that I don't know necessarily comes to the foreground of consciousness, but it certainly exists, and that is with these packages, these programs that I know when I first saw something called Lola, kind of blew me away. I think I first saw it on one of the earlier X-Men, where they actually made Patrick Stewart and they 20, 30 years younger than they really were, and of course that product has, I think, matured quite a bit. So I would think that it's even more amazing now. But we're seeing the need for these things because a lot of the movies that we're watching are dealing with real live actors, and guess what? Real live actors, after years and years, begin to age. And yet when they're doing a movie about 10, 15 years ago, and they need these actors to look like they did 15 years ago, they need stuff like
If
this.
only there was a place flooded with actors trying to make it instead of trying to preserve the good dozen that we have.
Well, it's interesting because when they get far back enough, then they can replace it with different people who kind of look like you think they would have looked like back then. But still, a lot of times it's not that far back. Yet it's 10, 15 years, and they still need to look like pretty much what most of us remember them to look like.
Absolutely, and a lot of that is actual frame by frame painting. There's a lot of they're called beauty artists. They do a lot of compositing. Compositing is like photoshopping on many frames. It's composing images together, but it's also painting things out. Like let's say, for example, there's a puppet, a physical puppet that's being run by a couple of puppeteers in a shot. Those puppeteers and the wires to the puppet are all painted out by artists that use this compositing software, and Lola is one of many places. It's a company that's based in LA and Vancouver that does a lot of this, and they did really phenomenal work on stuff like Grudge Match, which had a lot of facial reconstruction done, a lot of painting and stuff like that. But a lot of actors have writers in their contracts, and I've never done this. I've never been on a production where I've done this myself, but I know they have writers in their contracts that ask for some enhancements after the fact. It's like airbrushing, basically, but for a sequence as opposed to a single image.
Now, if it's a body part other than your face, they can have stand-ins, obviously. But when it's your face, and Robert De Niro wants to look a little younger, I don't think that he was in Grudge Match. I mean, they had to make them look younger. They did that technique.
Absolutely.
My first real, other than the X-Men, my other big experience was something called Surrogates with Bruce Willis. I don't know if you saw that. I mean, how young he looked, and then you see the real Bruce Willis later in the same movie. But when you see him as the surrogate, you go, "Oh my God!" He looks like 30 years younger.
Yeah. Some of that is through compositing. Some of that is by replacing the face. Benjamin Button is a beautiful example of that, where they replaced Brad Pitt's head with a digital version. They scan his head and then they remodel it and resculpt it to look older or younger.
The last part of that movie where they show Brad Pitt as like being, in his 20s, it's the last scene. It's only like about 3 or 4 minutes of him standing there in his jacket, and he looks like a kid, but it's Brad Pitt. You go, oh my gosh.
They couldn't afford 5 minutes. It had to be 3 minutes.
The expense must have been enormous to do that, I would think.
Absolutely, yeah. They spent a lot of time and effort and money getting these things right, because going to a movie nowadays it's all about the spectacle. You want to go and you want to see something just crazy amazing. If you want to sit and watch a subtle character study on some dramatic scenes, you probably are going to do that on a great TV show like Breaking Bad or something like that. But movies now are getting bigger and bigger and bigger spectacles. Like X-Men Apocalypse, just lots of stuff happening. So it's a huge field. It's a huge market.
Now, one thing that I guess this is a little bit of a spoiler. I don't know if anybody hasn't seen X-Men Apocalypse, but there is a scene where Wolverine appears, and it's supposed to be many years ago when
How's it a spoiler that Wolverine made into an X-Men movie?
Yeah, but it's the original actor, and they didn't make him look younger, which I found surprising. He actually looked like he would today, so I'm not sure exactly why they didn't use Lola to make him look younger. But Hugh Jackman was in a very short scene. Everybody cheered when they saw him and everything. He's in an X-Men Apocalypse, but they didn't make him look younger. He had a beard, and I don't know. Maybe it was just. It was.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. The whole alternate universe thing is I don't know how to feel about that. Maybe I'm just too old school.
I hope you don't like it because I don't like it. I think time travel is the laziest form of writing, but that's
Well,
just me.
because everything can be excused away or reasoned away through time travel. Because if
It's
you
like,
have
oh, why deal with past knots in the continuum when you can just start over?
That's right, and you can't untangle them. Ben has a point, that if it gets too convoluted, just go back in time and restart
Right.
it.
From
Yeah.
And,
from Chris,
and then you can have new and younger actors that are the hot rage at that moment step in instead, you know.
Uh-huh.
but you could also have new mutants instead of having to bring back I don't know, whatever. I think it's lazy.
Uh, all right, so now we're talking about all these special effects and everything. Can people still do what they want with some of the classics like Photoshop and Adobe Premiere and After Effects? I mean, or have they improved them quite a bit? I mean, where do the standard classics of software stand today, Darius?
You know, they've enjoyed a lot of improvements over the years. After Effects has some 3D capabilities where you can move the camera in 3D space and layout, so it's not just flat 2D planes. Same thing with Photoshop. You can bring in 3D objects and paint directly on them and have them in your images. You're still outputting, you know, JPEGs and TIFFs and, you know, flat art. But those are definitely the first step if you're getting into visual effects. Understanding how Photoshop and After Effects work are definitely good to know, and especially if you want to get into the 3D end of things, it's still good to have a really good grasp on those classics, Photoshop and After Effects.
And
for
also,
sure.
a lot of them are now. We're in the generation where most of these products that I name are no longer in the computer; they're in the cloud. So
Yeah. Adobe Creative Cloud. The way you don't buy a license for the software anymore, or at least the majority that they're pushing is now subscription based. So you
Uh-huh.
get yourself a monthly or yearly subscription, and you download the software and you can save things up to the cloud. I think
You're always,
eventually they want to be able to run
and
the
you're
software
yeah,
on their servers.
and you're always assured of having the latest version too. So when you're doing
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
you don't have to go 6.1 and 6.1.1. You don't do that because you're now assured when you're using the cloud-based software that you're running the latest with all the latest features and abilities, which for a yearly or fee or a monthly fee, which I think really pays off in the long run, rather than plucking $600 or $700 down for a static version of Photoshop. So those are good. But again, so you're saying that these classics or these venerable pieces of software have been updated to reflect the needs of artists who are in the TV and computer graphics industry?
Absolutely. They definitely offer a lot of tools for a lot of different uses, and you know, it's the staple. You know, it's like the word Kleenex. You know, you don't ask for tissue, you ask for Kleenex. When you edit an image, you Photoshop it. So it's become part of the lexicon, and you know, there's lots of image editing apps, but everybody goes to Photoshop. That's the de facto standard. So amateur, professional alike, it's really very powerful. I use it. You know, I have a CC account, and I use all of them, Premiere included, almost on a daily basis.
The only problem is if I have to sneeze and I have to use a Kleenex in the cloud, that can be kind of messy. So
Kleenex in the cloud, yeah, it's coming though.
it could be. um, okay, so digital video and special effects that people are using at home do you recommend that they start with the Adobe products or right into Maya, or I mean, what's your suggestion?
What I would say is you first define where you want to go, what you want to do. If you want to be a character animator, if you want to be a visual effects artist that does, you know, things like liquid and cloth and hair simulations, define what it is, because there's a lot of focused tracks that you can go into. It's not enough to say I just want to do CG. Professionally, you've got to you're a modeler, or you're a texture painter, or you're an animator. So you have to think about what your end goal is, and then go for there. What industry do you want to go in? Typically, if you want games, you're more likely better served to start with 3ds Max. There's a lot more seats out there for gaming companies with Max, although a lot of them use Maya as well. So starting with Maya or Max, you can't go wrong if you want to get into some sort of CG. But I would definitely start with understanding how Photoshop works and how you can edit images, because you do a lot of work inside of Max and Maya by using edited images like textures and backgrounds and things like that. So understanding how digital images work, you're in Photoshop, maybe you're in After Effects, maybe you're in Illustrator. And if you want to get into being like if you're a designer, if you're a graphic designer, you want to get into motion graphics, then you're probably looking at getting to know After Effects really well and getting into Cinema 4D, which is a fantastic and pretty easy package to pick up and learn. A lot of graphic design houses use Cinema 4D to make their 3D, to make these stunning designs that are in motion. Those are the top packages, I'd say, professionally. And then you get into specifics like simulations. Then you want to get to know RealFlow. You want to be a character modeler, you get into ZBrush or Mudbox, and you get to know those sculpting packages.
All right. I have two comments from one of our listeners, Jonathan. He says Wolverine is hundreds of years old due to his healing mutation, so it's mentioned that he ages more slowly. So I guess I must have missed.
That's what I thought, because I remember in one of the movies they had Wolverine in like the Civil War, like the American Civil War.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. Yeah.
Right. And then his other comment is just like Baymax, Ben was created to have a quote-unquote non-threatening, huggable design.
Ben Max.
Yeah. Ben Max. Wow. Thank you. I won't lie, and this is a little glimpse into the private life, but when we watched that movie with the whole family, everyone turned to me as soon as Baymax came online for the first time, and I was like, "Stop looking at me. Thank you." That was embarrassing.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Okay, so now I know that we're coming up almost out of time here, but I know that you were going to get some hands-on with some of these graphic workstations, like the new Hewlett-Packard workstation laptop. Maybe we should talk a little bit about that, and we can save that for next time because we only have a couple of minutes there. But
yeah, definitely. I think that's a good topic for next time. HP is sending me one of their Studio line laptops.
Oh.
And I'm going to learn a lot more about it over the next month, playing with it and seeing what it can do. I've had a lot of experience with these workstation laptops. Their top of the line is the ZBook series, and I think I've reviewed about 4 or 5 of those over the last couple of years, and they're just phenomenal. So there's some promising hardware coming that literally you can just put in your bag and walk around with. I played around with the Dell M5100, I believe, or 5500. That's a great little laptop as well. A good solid workstation with good graphics. But a lot of these packages that we've been talking about will run really well on any laptop that especially has discrete graphics, like a GeForce mobile card in it. They do run on these GPU on the CPU things, like Intel has now their graphics on the CPU. It's okay, it'll run, but at some point you're going to hit a kind of a glass ceiling. You're going to want to have a discrete system.
Really.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we're probably going to get into next time, but the idea that tablets were going to replace laptops, and we've seen some tablets that are higher end. And right now I'm simply thinking about There's like a Windows tablet that was huge, and then there was the iPad Pro that were supposed to take some, not exactly the rendering of video, but at least Photoshop and for artists and things like that. I just kind of want to see if these tablets are taking any kind of market share away from these higher end laptops. Like, can high end tablets replace high end laptops for little things?
Absolutely. Yeah. The only thing that like the Surface Pro is missing is discrete graphics. But the GPU that's on the Intel i7 definitely has a good enough amount of power to let you run Maya or Max on it. One of my colleagues at CalArts has a Surface that he uses Maya on regularly and hooks it into an external monitor and a 27-inch monitor and does a lot of work in there. The Apple Pro, I think, is limited by the apps that it can run, and a lot of these packages will run in OS X or Windows. I don't know if the Apple Pro can accommodate running Maya in OS X because I think you've got to code it directly for. But there are actually some animation and 3D packages, or I should say apps, that'll run in iOS that are pretty neat out there. You just have to go and take a look for them, but they won't be quite as robust as what you can do with the full Maya or Max.
Well, with the iPad Pro, one of the things that it has even a bigger tablet surface area, and of course its claim to fame is now the pen. It's back with the pen, the Apple Pen, which allows people to, as you say, who have the artistic wherewithal to take advantage of that, because now it's like drawing on paper, but now you're actually drawing on a surface that actually can transfer. Matter of fact, a lot of the Apple's ads these days are from artists, be them police, sketch artists, or what have you, that are doing it. They're saying, I'm using the iPad Pro with the pencil because I can do things on that I just couldn't do before with a regular pencil and chalk or whatever that they use.
That's great. Desktop version Wacom tablet has something called a Cintiq, which is basically a screen that you can draw directly on top of. A lot of professional artists use that, and that ends up hooking up to like a Mac Pro or a PC system. But the Apple Pro and the other tablets like the Surface, if they have a pressure-sensitive pen, depending on the app that you get, there's lots of sketching and drawing and painting that you can do, and it does free you up from having paper, pencil, and pens and paint at your disposal. So that's definitely awesome.
It gets rid of all the mess. I mean, I mean, and not only that, you can work.
I don't know about that, because whenever I try to paint my iPad Pro, it gets everywhere. It's
I mean, you can use, and Wacom is the same way with their tablet. You can work in medium that are not in the real world able to intermix with each other.
Yeah, totally.
Which I thought was really fascinating, because either you're working with oils or you're with watercolors, but now here you can mix them. You can work with charcoal and watercolors and oil and everything that traditionally would be messy, just wouldn't work. You can do it with it and have realistic results by using it. But,
and it comes down to the software that you're using and what the app can do and how good your pressure sensitivity is on the pen.
Sure.
But of course it comes down to the artist too and how well you're able to draw. So the more you do it, the better you get at it.
Yeah, pressure sensitivity and also tilt is another big thing. I mean, the angle of the pen can affect the stroke size and everything. All that.
Right.
That is very cool. And then again, a lot of them now. I know the Apple Pen, I still think, uses a battery. The Wacom doesn't even have a battery in the pen anymore. So that's some really cool technologies. Dariush, we're almost out of time. Can you tell us what you're up to and what you're doing these days?
Well, getting my hands on some of that new HP. They want to send me an all-in-one workstation, which is like an iMac thing as well. So I might be taking a look at some of that hardware and seeing what HP is coming down the line, basically.
Lucky you. I get to play with this stuff. All
Running
right.
out of space, though.
Well, Darius, listen, it's always a pleasure having you here on the show, and
Thank
Ben
you.
and I are going to see you next month, and that will probably be on the 20th of July. We'll see you in the same time, and we'll get a report back from you about all this equipment that you're getting, that you're going to be testing, and I'm certainly looking forward to hearing that. Again, Dariush Derakhshani, Computer America correspondent, graphics correspondent. Thank you so much, Darius, being with us today. Have a great rest of the week, okay?
You too. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. See you next time. All right, there you go. Okay, so what do we got? Oh, well, now we've got, we're going to head over to E3. Wow, this is exciting. Corey Gallagher is out on the floor in the middle of E3, and we're going to be talking to him today. On Monday, we had Josh Boykin, and he got there a little late, so he missed a couple of things. Corey is going to kind of fill in the blanks and talk about EA and Microsoft and Ubisoft and some of the titles and games that he's seen out there, and give us some of his reflections. And quite frankly, what Microsoft is doing with their newest version of their Xbox One, and was it Scorpio, and PlayStation 4.5. We're going to hear from him about all those things. That's coming up right now. You're listening to the Computer America Show. Ben and I will be right back momentarily at the top of the hour. Stay tuned for more Computer America.
Broadcasting live. It's the only national radio talk show on computers to air every weeknight. Computer America. Hosted by national columnist Craig Crossman. The first hour's behind us, but there's still more of tech news, tech talk, and your phone calls. We're being beamed nationwide at ComputerAmerica.com. You got computer problems? Bring them on. You're listening to Computer America. Computers run the world, and we run computers. Call us or send us an email to live@computeramerica.com.
Hello and welcome into Hour 2 of the nation's longest-running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers. This is the Computer America Show, and I'm your host, Craig Crossman.
And I'm your co-host, Ben.
And again, a really terrific hour with our first hour with Derakhshani, our computer graphics correspondent. If you missed any portion of it, you certainly can listen again. We archive all of our shows at ComputerAmerica.com. Just click on the archive selection on the menu bar on any page at ComputerAmerica.com. In fact, anything you want to know about a show is at ComputerAmerica.com, because it truly is the internet home of our radio broadcast. Okay, so we had yesterday we had Josh Boykin. We did coverage of E3, and in this hour, we're going to continue coverage of E3 with Corey Gallagher, who is an associate editor with PopZara Press and spends his days working as a journalist and technical writer, and his nights working as a crime-fighting detective. Or maybe he just plays a bunch of video games and messes around with a lot of tech while subjecting the world to his opinions on it all. He's been with PopZara since the heady days, early years of 2014, and tends to stick around, meaning that the nightmare might never end. Corey is out at the Electronic Entertainment Expo, better known as E3 in LA, and reporting live with us. Corey, welcome into Computer America. How are you?
They call it the Electronic Entertainment Expo. I think I call it the Electronic Exhaustion Expo. I have never been more tired in my life. Do they have you walking immeasurable distances? Oh, you don't even know.
Well, I mean, it's really, I would think that it's you're really in your element. I mean, this is like the best of the best. Everything about games is happening out at E3, and you're right in the middle of it. And I know Ben is very envious, would love to be out there with you. So I have to ask you, well, I mean, what's happening so far? What have you been seeing?
Well, the one game that's got everybody's attention now is the new Legend of Zelda game from Nintendo. I mean, I'm sure, Ben, you've heard about it at this point. I have seen nothing but GIFs and videos and the trailer. People are abuzz, really. Yeah, absolutely. The new Legend of Zelda game is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, and it's taken a pretty drastic departure. Previous Zelda games were pretty linear. You'd follow the story pretty closely. You would do dungeons in order. This one looks to be an open world game, like Skyrim comes to mind. Has climbing mechanics like the classic Shadow of the Colossus. It looks like a big change for the series.
Yeah, they really have been very, very linear, and this one being open world, you get to kind of pick your own adventure. And for just some of the videos I'm seeing, it's not just an update to because this is going to be a Wii U exclusive, a Wii U exclusive, as well as the new Wii NX or whatever that's going to be called. Yeah, and it's not just the gameplay that got an update, but from what I've been seeing, the graphics, the engine, the physics, all this, like, that seems to be what is really driving the discussion right now, because obviously you have, beta testers and the demos. The engines are really, really clean. Like right now I'm watching a video of a player who's chopping down wood in a windy area, and it catches fire because it's going past the campfire, and then the whole valley, because the whole windy valley catches fire. Like, it's little details like that for a Zelda game are almost unheard of. Like, it's not just RPG, but it's very, very in depth as far as the technology behind it, which is good to see from Nintendo.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the complaints that Nintendo gets on a pretty consistent basis is that they have their core franchises, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, Star Fox, and they don't tend to vary very much into those franchises. If you get a Mario game, you know what it's going to be like. It's going to be a platformer. You'll probably collect things. Pokemon has you going and collecting new monsters and fighting the Elite Four at the end, and every game is like that. Zelda has you going through the game, beating dungeons in order, eventually fighting Ganondorf, and it's always been like that. With Breath of the Wild, the fact that they're going in a new direction for the Zelda series is pretty impressive, completely unprecedented. I think it's going to do a lot for Nintendo.
Do you think this could? I don't want to say Nintendo's been in a funk, because they've definitely had a place as whereas you'd have to spend $300, $400, $500 on other consoles. Nintendo's kind of been behind the ball lately, and I don't know how powerful the Nintendo NX is going to be, but I can't imagine it's going to be a powerhouse. Do you think this could be something that kind of brings Nintendo back into being? I don't want to say a challenger just from one video game, but they need something to kind of pull themselves up, because I think a lot of journalists, game journalists, have kind of written off Nintendo, saying they'll always stick around because, like you said, they have their core franchises, but they're not going to do well compared to Sony and Microsoft. Do you think this could kind of catch them back up?
Well, a lot of people talk about the general failure of the Wii U. I mean, this is a system that didn't do great out of the gate, continued to do pretty poorly throughout its lifespan, and at this point, we know that there's a Nintendo console coming, we just don't know much about it. So at this point, it's pretty much dead. So one of the reasons that was a problem for the Wii U is that when that system released, there wasn't really a big hard-hitting game for it. You brought out the Wii, and you had just hit after hit. You had Wii Sports came with the console, and that was the reason most people bought Wii's, was to play Wii Sports. But it also came with a version of The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess. I mean, I know that when I got my Wii, that was one of the first games I bought for it, because it's a Zelda game. These are known to be good. I mean, there have been bad Zelda games, but they were on the CDI, and we mostly don't talk about them these days. So the fact that we've got Breath of the Wild looking like a launch title for the NX, I mean, that's probably going to help with sales, and that's really what a console needs, is a good start, like a good solid start to get going.
Absolutely, that makes complete sense. And
now, for those of us watching the live video, what are we watching? Because Ben,
that was the scene that I was describing earlier. Is that Zelda is sitting there, chopping down some trees, and then because the valley is so windy, it blows the trees past the campfire, and because it's the campfire, the trees catch fire, and then because it's windy grassland, the whole valley becomes set on fire. And again, I remember way back in the 90s, like Zelda had little elements like that where, to melt an ice crystal, to press a button, you had to shoot through the flame and your arrow would catch fire and then it would melt the ice and then you could hit the button. I mean, they've always had these little things, but the physics and the engine behind it, it definitely looks like, I don't want to say next generation console, but this looks like something that that you really would want to experience on the Nintendo NX.
Right. Nintendo has kind of always played a different game than the other console manufacturers. While Sony and Microsoft have gone for this big bad hardware, Nintendo's kind of stood back and said, you know what, instead of giving you this really impressive piece of kit, what we're going to do is figure out new ways for you to play our games. And with the Wii, that was incredibly successful. They came up with the idea of the Wii Remote, which kind of incorporated motion into the game and started an entire generation of motion-controlled game peripherals, like the PlayStation Move and the Kinect that we saw in the Xbox today. With the NX, what we've heard, is not much, but indications have pointed toward the NX being a console that's more on par with what Sony and Microsoft have out now, which if we see the Project Scorpio from Xbox, or rather from Microsoft, and the PS Neo from Sony, it still might be a half step behind, but that's going to put the NX in a position that's way more powerful than any previous Nintendo console, and that might make a difference.
Right, and that's something I definitely want to get into with you, which is the hardware for each of these companies. As you said, the Nintendo NX really don't know much about that. Hopefully, it's going to be current gen at least. To kind of put developers at ease that they aren't developing for a console that's already quote unquote out of date, because that's the last thing developers want to do is make video games for a console that is seen as inferior. So hopefully that's true. And I think we're going to talk about the Project Scorpio and I've always called the PlayStation 4.5. You just called it Project, or the PlayStation Neo, was it?
Neo is, I believe, the code name for the project right now, and it's what's commonly being referred to. But people also say PlayStation 4.5 because that's basically what it is. What we're seeing right now is the start of what a lot of people are calling the iterative generation of consoles. We are in the 8th generation of consoles right now with the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One, and people are saying the next consoles, the Project Scorpio and the PlayStation Neo, are essentially generation 8.5. They don't really represent a big enough step up in the hardware to really call this the end of a generation. Plus, what we've heard, rather indications have been that these new games on these new consoles will be compatible with the current consoles. We don't really know at the moment. People will tell you yes, obviously, because obviously people aren't going to want to immediately upgrade to the Project Scorpio Xbox if they just bought an Xbox One, or if they just bought the new Xbox One Slim console. Likewise, people might not want to buy the Neo if they already just bought a PS4. It's going to make people think that, oh no, I bought this hardware, it's already obsolete, how terrible. So that's causing a lot of consternation right now, actually. People are really concerned about this being an issue because one of the advantages of console gaming over PC gaming is that it tends to be less expensive. You're not paying as much for a decent console as you are for a PC, even with the same specs. Plus, this uniformity of console hardware means that you buy a game, you know it's going to work. But when we start separating consoles into PS4 and PS4.5, that generates a whole different problem. If I buy this game intended for PS4.5, what's it going to be like on PS4? Is it going to run poorly? Am I going to have a less good experience? Do I need to go out and immediately buy the 4.5? And it can go the other way too. What if I buy this game for the 4.5 and it's just about the same on the 4? At that point, why do I need a new console?
Well, and just real quick, Craig, that's what I kind of picked up from the Microsoft and the Xbox One when they were announcing the Xbox One S and the Xbox Project Scorpio, is that he's very, very careful to say that any game that you purchase for the Xbox One will run on the Xbox One S, and it will run on the Project Scorpio. But he never made a mention that anything that is developed for Scorpio or the One S will be backwards compatible with the current Xbox One.
And I think here this is leading us to a situation which could be, I don't know, could not be very good. It used to be you had anywhere from an 8 to a 10-year life when you bought a console, Corey, right? You would figure it would last you 8 to 10 years. Now we're seeing an acceleration here, and we're seeing new models come out. Now, that's not to say, if it falls into the category of a smartphone. The smartphone, every year you want to get the newer, latest version because they're new things. But, and a smartphone can be anywhere from $300 to $600 depending on what you get. So it's not that much of a difference, but it looks like the longevity, or investing in the newest technology that would ensure you a 10-year lifespan isn't going to happen anymore. Your thoughts on that?
Right. I mean, that brings up a lot of questions a lot of people have had lately. First off, you mentioned it was mentioned that they said that games are getting backward compatible, et cetera, but one of the things they didn't mention is whether Scorpio games were on the Xbox One. And they know that this is a question that's on people's minds, and the fact that it wasn't answered is really conspicuous. And I think that tells us the answer, which is that no, they won't. Which ties into what Craig was saying, which is that we've come into the console generations expecting to get a good solid 5, 6, 7, maybe even 8 years out of our consoles. And at this point, if these new ones come out, that's going to be 2, 3, 4 years. Which there's a lot. Sorry.
If that, I mean, we might start seeing the acceleration of new consoles coming out at a more and more rapid pace.
All of this virtual reality that companies are showing off. I mean, and I don't want to say virtual reality is going to be running at the minimum specs on consoles, but I think consoles are going to be really racing ahead and seeing how far they can push the envelope when virtual reality comes out. So I think virtual reality is going to we're going to start seeing 2-year consoles because of virtual reality, and you just need the added hardware.
Right. I mean,
or maybe they'll have some sort of modular system where you buy a console and then in 2 years you can buy a plug-in module that that'll give it more life or something. So you don't have to buy the whole thing.
Power pack.
Yeah, power pack. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it might come to that. I mean, because look. What do you see? Are you seeing a lot of virtual reality out at the E3?
Virtual reality is very big at E3 right now. But that's the thing. Virtual reality debuted this year and to some extent last year. And as we've seen, I mean, it's not really been big with consumers. There was a massive issue of sticker shock when the Oculus Rift announced its price. The same thing has happened with the HTC Vive. And these are the two main VR platforms. I mean, along with that, we've also seen Oculus basically to some degree attempting to segregate the different forms of VR with games that only work on the Oculus. And these aren't good signs. I mean, these don't inspire confidence in consumers. And without that confidence, it's going to be difficult to launch with essentially a new platform for gaming. So, what you see at E3 and what eventually comes out and becomes popular are two entirely different things. Last year it was also VR, but still you can't walk into a store and buy a headset.
Yeah, that availability is definitely a problem because I think a lot of these bigger companies are afraid to say, all right, there's going to be a demand, so we're going to need 10,000 units on our shelves at Best Buy, and yet no one wants to make that huge investment because if it's a flop, that's going to really hurt. So now you have to pre-order them or just order them, and they're on like 3-week back order. Yeah, the adoption rate is definitely slowing on both ends from consumers and from companies having the availability of the unit. So not good.
Sure, absolutely.
Not good.
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of thing it's a big indicator. I mean, people like you and Craig and I and all the beautiful, attractive listeners of Computer America, I mean, we're one demographic. We're the people who care enough about these things to listen to a radio show about tech or to go to an expo about tech or to read about tech. But what really comes down to it, I mean, the most significant portion of consumers are the ones who don't listen to radio about tech or go to shows or whatever. They're the ones who walk into a store, they see their headset for $200-$300, and they realize they think to themselves, you know what? I just got my tax return. I can afford this. I have a little bit extra money. I can afford this. And if it costs $600-$700, or you can't find it in stores, or both, that's not a good sign. That's not going to get you anywhere.
Right. And so, and Corey, I hate to do this to you, but we have like 40 minutes left. It's going to be a really, really tight hour. So I think we should start, kind of from the beginning, when you first got there at E3, and let's kind of pick this up with video games, because we're going to hit on hardware as we go along. When we hit Microsoft, we're going to talk about hardware, and as we hit PlayStation and Sony, we're going to talk about hardware. But when you first got in, I don't know when you officially landed, but hearing from Josh Boykin, it sounded like the
There was like day 0 and day -1, which had like Bethesda and EA Play. Did you attend any of these? Typically, I don't actually attend the conferences themselves. It's a big mess getting in, and really, you're not really getting much from being there that you wouldn't get from just watching a stream. So that's typically what I do. What I've seen Bethesda, I've seen EA, I've seen Sony, I've seen Microsoft. I can talk a little bit about the games that really got my eye there, if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So I think that we'll start with EA. How about that one?
Okay. So EA's biggest thing for me, this might be a little bit strange. I really liked Titanfall 2.
It's strange. Why do you say it's strange?
Because,
it's supposed to be one of the anticipation games. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a very anticipated game, sure, but people might remember Titanfall 1 as excuse the term, it was a bit of a wet fart. It got a lot of attention, it got a lot of hype, but when it came down to it,
the DLC for ending. So they were like, oh no, we folks, and they threw us a butt. But do that for their Mass Effect problem because I know a lot of people who are really invested in that. So did any of the sport games really kind of innovate? Because I know it's like a yearly thing. You can expect it. There's like NBA, Madden, FIFA. Like, did any of the sports games really jump out at you?
Here's the thing with sports games. I mean, they're sports. So you talk about innovation, you're not really going to tend to see it with sports games. So what sports games do that people might not consider, it's important not just for people who play sports games, but for the industry as a whole. If you want to see graphical innovation, if you want to see video games looking the best they can possibly look, you want to look at sports games. You don't need to take football and create this new innovative RPG system for football. It's going to be football. You know what it's going to be like. There are rules set in stone. It's going to be a football game. So you can refocus your money and your effort toward making this football game look as good as possible. And you will not see graphics in video games, especially console games, better than what's in the latest Madden, for instance. And that's a big thing because that sort of thing spreads to other games and other genres.
In other words, I mean, the big thing in sports games is the video realism. I mean, trying to make it look you're looking at real people doing real things, even though it's all computer graphics. And I've noticed that over the years, it gets to the point now where you're looking at it, and if you look at it, at first you're going, are those real people, or is it? Sometimes you just quite can't tell, or it's getting so close, and it's just getting better and better. So and because they don't have to develop other worlds and other things, it's just in a simple, the standard environment. And as you say, there are certain rules that you stay by because it's a sporting game. They can put all the dollars into making it looking as realistic as possible, and what makes perfect sense. And right. What happens when they finally get to the point where it's just like watching a game and you can't tell anymore? Maybe we don't have football.
Fire the NFL and we just play video games.
Yeah, just to have video games, you can't tell the difference. Why spend millions of dollars on a player? When you can just do it with CG.
Right.
Right. So and in this last 2 minutes, I really want to wrap up EA. Anything else that you saw from the EA press conference that people should be looking out for?
Battlefield 1 is a game that's on everybody's mind right now. If you play games, chances are you've tried Battlefield or in some form or another since 1942 or any of those. And it's one of those games that really symbolizes multiplayer shooters. And now we're going back to World War I with Battlefield 1, which is fascinating to me. A few years ago, maybe a couple console generations ago, we had this big focus on World War II-based shooters. And for a while there, people got sick of them. Oh, no more World War II, et cetera, et cetera. It's interesting to see a World War I-based shooter. We don't have many of those. I can't think of many, to be honest. And that's, just taking the setting by itself does a lot. But the fact that it's going to be a Battlefield game, it's got the full support of EA and DICE behind it, that's a big deal. Even if you're not a big fan of this kind of military shooter, might still be worth keeping on your radar just because it's going to be one of those games that really shows what AAA games are all about, which is spectacle. It's going to look great, pretty good shots, going to play great, and it's going to take things in a direction we haven't seen in a long time. That's worth looking at.
Right, and this is, as we said with Josh yesterday, that it's a deviation from the general, you get a Call of Duty and you get a parallel of Battlefield, and they've been in futuristic, kind of first-person shooters, and this is the first deviation where we've seen, Call of Duty throw the gloves off. They're like, okay, we're going infinite warfare, and we are going with spaceships, and we are going low Earth orbit, and then out comes Battlefield 1, which is, we're going even more primitive than World War II, which is what you all want. We're going World War I on you folks, and so we're seeing that split, and honestly, gamers seem very receptive to Battlefield 1.
Right, they do. I think what gamers are big on right now, if you want kind of a shift away from the modern warfare setting, that was, as I mentioned, we had World War II for a while. Then we had Modern Warfare for a while, thanks to the success of course, Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That produced multiple Modern Warfare games. It produced the Black Ops titles that produced Battlefield, that produced Battlefield Hardline. And now people are saying, you know what, if you're going to keep playing these games, you have to shake it up a little bit. And that's resulted in Call of Duty.
Yeah.
Sorry?
Yeah. Hey, all right, Corey, we're going to take a little break, and we'll be right back. You're listening to the Computer America Show. We're talking to Corey Gallagher. He is a Computer America gamer correspondent with PopZera. He's out at the E3 convention. We'll continue on with him right after this. Please stay with us. Hi, this is Craig Crossman, host of the Computer America Show. You have important meetings to schedule. Your company's getting ready for its IPO, and you're in charge of the PPA fundraiser this month. So how do you coordinate everyone to be available at the same time? Are you still using emails, phone calls, even text messages to schedule meetings with a group of people? How's that working out for you? That's so great, huh? It's the fact that every day, millions of people suffer from scheduling headaches. Well, with Doodle, scheduling meetings with a group of people is quick and easy. With Doodle, you can easily propose available times to each member. Each one checks off the times that they're available, and then you simply pick the time that works best for the group, all in an easy-to-read display that integrates with your existing calendar. Nothing could be more simple. Give Doodle a try for free, and like millions of Doodle users, you'll truly see how easy it is to find the perfect date and time for all your meetings. That's www.doodle.com. Looking for a best friend? Brother Wolf Animal Rescue has your best friend waiting just for you. The mission of Brother Wolf Animal Rescue is to help build a sustainable, no-kill community where no dogs or cats are ever killed for population control, where true euthanasia is reserved only for animals who are irremediably suffering, or for animals who are truly a threat to society and with no hope of rehabilitation. Brother Wolf staff and volunteers go door to door, neighborhood by neighborhood, to educate citizens about local resources available for at-risk pets. Their families connect with those resources. Brother Wolf's community-based approach to no-kill helps keep family pets healthy, happy, and in their homes and out of the local shelter system in the first place. For more information or to make a tax-deductible donation to this wonderful 501c3 organization, visit their website at www.bwar.org. Help to realize Brother Wolf's vision when no animal is euthanized for lack of a home. Who's a good boy?
Ew, sorry, robot vacuum still can't dodge dropping. I'm Marty Winston with a News Tips Bullet Review for Computer America. This time, the My Phaser X10. It's the size and shape of a smartphone, and a front print that looks like a handset screen helps sell its masquerade. But the X10 My Phaser is something else entirely. With its arming switch off, it's a modest LED flashlight. Yawn. Flick that switch on, and it's a high-voltage stun gizmo that, when skillfully used, can disorient or disable an assailant. Hey, don't you dare use it on anybody who isn't. We note a higher word count in the warnings and disclaimers than in the instructions, as there should be, because this thing delivers a big kick. Bottom line, My Phaser may look like a phone in your hand, but it leaves bad guys wishing for a soft place to land. Marty Winston with a News Tips Bulletin Review for Computer America.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show here in the second hour. We are finishing out with Mr. Corey Gallagher, and yeah, we're doing all things E3 and E3 related. And yeah, Corey, unless you have any kind of closing statement for EA, yeah, we have about 6 more studios to go.
Well, something needs to be said about the fact that EA itself wasn't necessarily on the E3 show floor. They actually had their own separate function called EA Play.
How do you think that's going to affect E3 in the future? Because obviously E3 makes its profit from these companies who buy out lots and lots of floor space, and EA is one of the biggest, game developing companies out there. How do you think it's going to affect the future of E3 if these companies would rather host their own events rather than paying, for this huge convention?
I mean, without spiraling off into a long discussion about how the nature of video game marketing is changing, we've come to accept, for instance, that video game magazines aren't really a thing anymore. Instead, we get most of our news from not even online sources, really. Mostly YouTube is one thing. Twitch.tv is one thing. We get our information about games from influencers, basically people who play games, people who want you to watch them playing games, people who get the same kind of consideration now that the press used to back in the day. So with that, E3 itself kind of loses a little bit of impact, because do we really need a big show to showcase all of our upcoming games? We could just like give press builds to these influencers, have them show it off in their own money and their own time. I mean, that's a massive savings for marketing budget. That's a huge, if the biggest chunk of a game's development is spent on marketing, then imagine what that can do for overall game budgets.
Yeah, I said that to Josh Boykin. I said, we might find ourselves not going to these conventions anymore. It's all on the internet. Maybe we'll just go to the virtual versions of these things. Put on our VR headsets and go virtually. Not having to leave our home.
Entirely possible. Entirely possible.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I guess the biggest market for VR is officially journalists. That's cool.
There you go.
EA, good. They had a lot of good showing, so we'll leave them a little bit in the past. Let's move on to, how about Bethesda? Did anything from Bethesda tickle your fancy?
So here's the most interesting thing to me from Bethesda, and again, I'm not really sure it's going to be the same thing everybody else liked. I was a huge fan of the reveal of Prey, which, if you never played Prey, it basically did the entire Portal concept before Portal did it. It was an FPS that played with physics. It played with the idea of space being one continual idea. You would walk through one door, come out a different door 50,000 feet away, or you'd see yourself walking through a different door. It's difficult to explain. It fooled around with physics. It was really cool. And now here we have Prey. Not Prey 2, as it turns out, which is a game that was teased for years and never actually went anywhere. Saw a really great teaser for that. It makes it look like this wonderful horror game. I don't know. I'm pretty excited for that. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah, that's one that I unfortunately didn't catch. But, I mean, it seems like another theme that a lot of these developers seem to be preying on is, of course, nostalgia. I mean,
Sure.
We're going to talk a little bit later about, I'm sure, the Crash Bandicoot, kind of reemergence. So it's not unheard of to see these big companies go way, way back in their archives and say, what did work and what can we make work again? So I guess there's a Prey 2006 version, and upcoming is a Prey 2017 video game. So I guess look forward to that.
It's looking really good to me. Other things that Bethesda did, I'm sure we're all aware of the sequel to Dishonored, Dishonored 2. Dishonored 1, I don't feel like it got a lot of hype when it came out. It's this stealth-based action / RPG / tactical infiltration simulator that just kind of came out of nowhere a few years ago and made a big splash. People really like Dishonored. Here we have Dishonored 2, which every indication is that it's going to be amazing. I mean, one of the biggest things that they took ideas from people who played Dishonored 1, the different tricks they did to clear levels, the combinations of the magic powers you had in that game, and made those into actual game mechanics in Dishonored 2. It's looking really cool. And the fact that it's getting the kind of hype that Dishonored 1 didn't says that Bethesda's confident in it as well.
Yeah, the Dishonored 1, that was a lot of fun for me. I know a lot of people gave it high praise because it was kind of choose your own adventure. You get a different ending depending on if you killed a bunch of people or if you stealthed your way through and didn't kill anyone. You get two different kind of endings. I enjoyed hacking my way through the game, a lot of fun. But Dishonored 2,
right.
They're the original game mechanics, and they didn't want to one-to-one, kind of say, okay, you kind of have this power to blink, teleport, whatever you want to call it. And in Dishonored 2, they're giving you a similar one, but it's its own spin. So it's not just a remake of the first one. It's, kind of an innovation on the first one. So that was good to see.
Right.
Bethesda, Fallout 4 VR. What are your feelings?
Now, I myself, I'm not the biggest proponent of VR. It's not something that I'm really capable of using. I have some weirdness going on with my eyes, so I'm not a huge fan of it. But actually, my colleague Grayson Hamilton went today to experience Fallout 4 in VR, and he says that after a little bit of time getting used to it, that it's amazing. I mean, it's like second nature. You'll get used to aiming, you get used to moving around. He said the biggest issue with Fallout 4 in VR is that you move very fast compared to most VR-based games where you're slowed down to keep you from getting sick.
Okay. Yeah, that is, I'm sure one of many, many, many we're going to see in the coming years. which is taking these games that were successful and giving them a version of VR. So, it's Fallout 4 today, Skyrim tomorrow, Elder Scrolls Online the next day. I mean, there's going to be these ports to VR because it's, just makes sense. If it worked for some people, it's going to work again. Maybe.
Well, it's interesting with Fallout 4 because this is the first kind of mainstream game that's doing this. And as we talked about earlier in the show, VR doesn't really have much of an install base just yet. I mean, Bethesda is taking a risk porting this game over like this because let's say you bring out Fallout 4 VR and, nobody does anything with it. Nobody wants it because they don't have a headset, because they don't like VR, because headsets are too expensive, because you can't find one. There are a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. So they're taking a risk here.
Absolutely. So Bethesda, if you have nothing else to say, they came out with a lot of great games. They really showed off that, hey, we have some good stuff on the horizon. And I think Bethesda did really, really nice. But, other studios. So unless anything else for Bethesda, I say we move on to Microsoft.
Absolutely. I mean, one last thing needs to be said for Bethesda. They are working apparently on a remaster of Skyrim. Everybody's excited for that. We don't really need to say any more about that.
Right. Yeah. The remake of Skyrim is going to be a godsend for a lot of people who could not play it on their newest console. So that's going to be nice.
Right.
So Microsoft, I say before we get into the software, we should really kick into just what did Microsoft release as far as hardware goes, because they did come out with 2 new consoles, and that's going to kind of raise alarm bells for a lot of people.
Right. Now, Microsoft did something that I find a little bit strange, which is, as you said, they announced 2 different pieces of new hardware. The first one is the Xbox One S, which is basically a slim version of the Xbox One, along the lines of what we saw happen to the PS2 and the PS3. It's a smaller system. It runs 4K HD video. It is basically an excuse for you to buy another Xbox One if you already have one because it looks really nice. Got a fancy looking controller with it. It's white accents, a grip in the back of it. It looks solid. But here's the thing. You're going to announce the smaller console. People are going to buy it. And then we've also announced this Project Scorpio thing, which is apparently the actual next step for Xbox, which, as we talked about earlier, is the Xbox 1.5, essentially. It's an Xbox intended to play games in 4K, which we got to note is different from 4K HD video. Play games in 4K and run VR. So this brings up a big question. It's like Microsoft is basically cannibalizing themselves. They're saying to consumers, look, you bought the Xbox One, here's a better Xbox One. Sorry. Or you bought the better Xbox One, well, later we're going to have this fancy Xbox One that runs games in 4K. It runs VR games. How do you feel now about having bought the fancy new Xbox One? I don't really understand their motivations here, to be honest.
Yeah, that is what led Craig to continuously ask, is there going to be some kind of upgrade path? Because I'm sure a lot of people are hoping that that's the case, even though we know as gamers that's not going to happen. But a lot of people are hoping that I already bought into your ecosystem that I thought was, kind of going to be set in place for a couple of years. I was going to get my money's worth. And now you're telling me that, well, in about a year, we're going to have something that has true 4K gaming and true virtual reality that we can play on it. But, anything we buy in the past couple of years and anything we buy for the next year until that comes out is going to be outdated as soon as it does. And that's a hard pill to swallow for people who are looking to buy something.
Right. And here's the thing about the video game industry, and I don't want to sound too cynical, but it has to be said. One of the defining features of the game industry is the fact that it's constantly testing its limits to see what consumers will put up with. If you remember back in the day with Bethesda releasing the Elder Scrolls Oblivion that had horse armor in it, people were up in arms about that. But today, it's unthinkable that a AAA game would release without DLC content. Or back in the day, online passes. If you bought a used game, there's a good chance you couldn't play online unless you paid a little bit extra because you bought a used game. You were being punished for buying a used game. People said they wouldn't stand for that, and yet they did. So here we have this iterative console idea, which is you bought a console 2 years later, here's a better console, you should probably upgrade. And people are up in arms about that, but history has shown us that, I hate to say it, gamers getting up in arms about something doesn't mean they won't buy it.
That's very, very true. So yeah, so Xbox One will definitely wait. We'll definitely see what happens on the hardware side, but on the software side, we're going to talk a little bit about it. But I really want to get to the PlayStation because this is what we heard from Josh Boykin was that that PlayStation and Sony trounced, and I'm going to use the word trounced Microsoft. So Microsoft software-wise, a new Gears of War, a new Forza, all of the traditional console pushers, a new Dead Rising that looked very good, and then just things like Scalebound and Tekken. Did any of these kind of grab you?
Well, here's the thing with this. A lot of these games were games that we already knew existed, even as of last year. I mean, we first saw Gears of War 4 last year, and back then it was new and it was exciting and it was sexy, but seeing it again for a second year just tells me, hey, it's not out yet. We're not done yet. That doesn't impress me. Scalebound. We've known about Scalebound for years now. Seeing a trailer yet again doesn't impress me at this point. So I think that in the end, Microsoft's conference is focused so much on the hardware precisely because Sony didn't introduce any. We know they have some coming, but that's not the direction they took, and Microsoft there saw an opening.
Right. Yeah. So that's it. Scalebound, I wasn't really impressed. I think the combat was really, really slow. The multiplayer aspect didn't really grab me. It looked like a very convoluted Final Fantasy fight. So, I mean, that really didn't grab me. The only thing I will say is that Dead Rising 4, that did kind of hype me up a bit. That looked like a return of the original character, and it looked like a good, just shoot 'em up, zombie, feel good game.
Absolutely. I mean, we're all excited to see more Frank West because he's covered wars,
Yeah. Right. All right. So yeah. And again, sorry, listeners out there that feel this is very rushed. It's because it is. There is a lot going out there at E3, and there will be more even after this. But so Microsoft, any final words from any software before we move on to Ubisoft?
I'm going to agree with you on Dead Rising 4 being the thing that I was most excited for, the game that was new, that really got my attention, as opposed to, here, this game still isn't out, but please stay excited for it.
Absolutely. So, all right. So, Ubisoft, they are a game developer, much in the same vein as Bethesda, and they have their own, kind of core franchises that I think a lot of people were looking forward to. I'm just going to run through a few of these here real quick and see which ones stood out to you. But we have things like Watch Dogs 2. We have things like Star Trek Bridge Crew, The Division, which is the DLC Underground, South Park, new South Park. A lot of people were very excited to see a new South Park. Who knew, of all things? And, of course, a new Tom Clancy.
Sure. Ubisoft in recent years has become kind of the publisher that everybody loves to hate. I mean, you go into any gaming-related forum and talk to people who are really into games, they'll tell you they can't stand Ubisoft because they keep making the same games over and over again, which is interesting because this year, for instance, we didn't see a new Assassin's Creed. That was pretty much a yearly franchise. We saw 3, 4, Black Flag, Unity, Rogue, all released in a relatively short span of time. And it looks like they're taking a break from the franchise for a bit, maybe to focus on the movie, which is interesting to me. But as far as what they actually did talk about, Tom Clancy Wildlands looks good to me. We knew about it already. It's not new, but it looks like a good game. The Division, the expansion is interesting, especially because indication has been that the Division has had some issues lately. It's had issues with hackers, with cheaters, and the fact that they're still going all in with that sounds good to me. Ubisoft For Honor looks good to me. I mean, again, a game we knew about, but a solid-looking game and a medieval combat title, new IP, which kind of does something for the haters who said Ubisoft does the same thing over and over again. And we have this new IP, this interesting-looking take on medieval multiplayer combat, which that seems pretty exciting.
Corey, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I got to ask you this, because I didn't get the chance to ask Josh of it. You obviously experienced gamer. You follow all this stuff. You do this professionally. It's just wonderful. You're out at E3. Were there any surprises did you see something that you didn't expect, or out of E3, or is it too early there, or do you anything catch your eye that you didn't kind of hit you from left field?
It's interesting. I was talking to my colleagues about this exact same thing, and we have Grayson, who this is his first year. Everything is new and fancy and bright to him, and he is really, really excited, and everything is sunshine and rainbows. And then we have Herman and I, who are grizzled veterans at this point. I mean, I've been for 2 whole years now. And I have to admit, compared to last year, there really aren't that many surprises. I mean, we had showstoppers, literal showstoppers last year, like the reveal of the Final Fantasy VII remake. I mean, that was something people have wanted for the better part of a decade now. And boom, there it is. It's in your face. We haven't seen anything like that. The closest thing we have is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, which, I mean, sure, it's really cool, and I'd love to play it, but it's not a Final Fantasy VII remake. So, and I mean, I don't want to say it's more of a routine show than usual, but I have to admit, being on the floor, it's kind of how it feels to me. It feels like we're seeing a lot of sequels. It feels like we're seeing a lot of games that do the same thing other games have done. I think right now everybody's playing it safe, and I think to some degree it might involve the growth of VR. I mean, maybe the companies don't want to invest too much in traditional games because who knows, VR could take off at some point, and then everybody's playing VR games, and we're releasing non-VR games. What a disaster that would be.
Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, there's also the pitfall that like with 3D TVs, it was going to be the next big thing, and look what happened. It fizzled. I don't know.
People get excited about VR, and people get excited about VR. Just tell them, remember what happened with the Virtual Boy.
So I mean, it may fizzle. Maybe hardware and software technology isn't there yet. For this, it's like 3D TV. It's maybe.
I mean, it definitely wasn't there in the '90s when it first tried to catch on. I think VR's come a long way, and and again, I've tried the HTC Vive. If you put it on your face, you're gonna like it. Of course, any extenuating eye problems, kind of excluded. But I think a lot of people, if they go out there and they try it, it's something that people haven't really done before, and it really does give you a next level immersion. But that's something that I think people like. It's just sticker shock. Who can afford $1,600 worth of hardware just to play a $40 game?
Yeah,
not many people.
And how do we know it's going to last? I mean, it might be fun, for the first time it's going to be new, novel, and different for a little while, but then it's going to fade off, and then I want to go back to my my 4K monitors or something, because
right,
that's what worries me. Corey?
Right, absolutely. And on the same level, again, we talk about paying a lot and experiencing the sticker shock to get a VR headset. And that's one thing. The other thing is that so far, there really haven't been any real killer app games for VR. Nothing has made me, perk my ears up and say, look, I really need to go out there and shell out this ungodly amount of money to get a VR headset because I just have to play this game. And that's what moves hardware. I mean, that's what sells consoles. That's part of what caused the Wii U to fail. It didn't release with Zelda. It didn't release with the big fancy new Mario game. It didn't release with a new Pokemon. It was just there. There was nothing you had to have it for. Contrast with the Wii, which had Zelda, which had Wii Sports. Contrast with the Xbox 360, which had Gears of War, which was it redefined the third-person shooter. So for VR to really take off, we need that kind of killer app, and we're only just now seeing companies, even take their tiniest little steps into that particular pool with Fallout 4 VR, for instance.
Yeah, in other words, you're right. I think because there's no game that you can play with VR that you can't play that same game on a flat screen. I mean, there's nothing that says there's nothing there that requires you to have VR. This can only play with VR in the VR mode. I mean,
exactly. Well, they have like that, but they aren't, but they aren't console pushers. There's some good games in the horror genre. There's some good first-person shooter games, but there's nothing that says, just like Corey was saying, there's nothing that says I need a VR headset for that game.
Right.
There hasn't been that yet.
Yeah. Do you think there will be, Corey?
It's really hard to say. I think we're in kind of a catch-22 right now. We want to sell these fancy new, very expensive headsets to people because that's going to make us a lot of money. At the same time, we don't want to spend a lot of money making games for our fancy new expensive headsets because people aren't buying them. you have to do one or the other. And if neither of those happen, VR itself is going to die a slow and painful death, just like what happened with those 3D TVs everybody was supposed to want.
Yeah, that's the big worry. I haven't seen the killer
3D TV.
I haven't seen the killer app yet for VR. I mean, maybe it's out there, maybe it's waiting in the wings, but right now, it's just an enhancement of 2D. I mean, there's not one game that you can really play in VR that you really can't play on a flat screen.
Well, right. There's also the issue of. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just want, Craig keeps saying that, and before it gets stuck in his head, and he says it 1,000 times and says it 1,000 times again. There are tons of games that are only VR compatible,
right?
But none of them are really worth the initial price drop of the console. So, there are games that you can play on one or the other, but right now VR is looking really lackluster in its lineup of games.
What about AR? Is there any AR going on out there, Corey?
I have not seen anything related to augmented reality. In fact, that entire concept seems to have been kind of supplanted by virtual reality. The only big augmented reality game that's really gotten on the radar lately is Pokemon Go from Nintendo and Niantic, which great idea, really excited for it, but that's it. I think AR has just kind of fallen by the wayside.
What about Minecraft? Didn't they have an AR version of that coming up?
They did. They talked about it a little bit last year, but that kind of, again, fell by the wayside in favor of, again, these headsets, which are very pricey and very distinctive. And if you have one, people will know you have one, so we better start selling them soon.
Yeah. Well, all right. So we got about 2 minutes left. Corey, anything else you want to mention about E3, other than the fact that you become very jaded about the whole thing?
Apparently, I'm not the only one. Don't get me wrong. It's a great show. Video gaming is still a great hobby. Don't listen to the old jaded men like me who say otherwise. Like I said, we're seeing a lot of VR this year, and it's entirely possible, given the exodus from E3, that the show is going to become smaller. It's going to change in some way. So enjoy E3 in its current form while you can, because next year, who knows? It might just be like a fan run or a event that allows fans in. You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Well, okay. Now E3 goes on to what?
I can't tell you how happy that makes me that I wanted to, but I was unable to make it out to E3 this year, and that you're telling me next year it's probably going to be a shadow of its former self. That it warms the cockles.
Sunshine and rainbows.
Well, Corey, listen, Ben and I want to thank you for being with us here tonight and kind of giving us a wrap up of E3. Of course, we'll be talking more about it on our Gamer Tuesdays with Josh Boykin. We'd love to have you back on the show as well. When you get back, we'll do a Gamer Tuesday with you as well. In the meantime, enjoy E3 out there, and have a good time, and we'll catch you soon. Okay.
Great, thanks very much. And remember, guys, check popzara.com for all your E3 coverage. It's going to be wonderful because I'll have wrote most of it.
Yeah, there you go. All right, thanks again, Corey. Have a good day. Take care.
Right, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. All right, there he goes, Corey Gallagher again with PopZara and out at E3, and hopefully you enjoyed that. Now, coming up on tomorrow's show, we're going to have Marcel Gagne. It's going to be our all Linux show. Monsieur Gagne is going to be joining us. He is just a fun guy, Marcel, and
all about Linux, and he's very, very in tune with the Linux community. And
90 seconds.
He always comes up with new distributions and Linux news. So if you're all about Linux, this is the show for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So he'll be joining us tomorrow. And again, don't forget, on Friday, we're going to be giving away that Logitech M535 Bluetooth wireless mouse to some lucky winner. Head over to computeramerica.com and get yourself registered. It's so easy. I just go on the Interact pull-down menu and frequent all the different places that Computer America interacts with. All the
60
Facebook,
seconds.
YouTube, Twitter, Pinterest, they're all there. And each one acts as an entry. It's just that simple, and then you'll have that many. You can have the 5 entries every single week, and you only have to do it one time. And you might be winner of that Logitech M535 Bluetooth wireless mouse valued at $40. So that wraps it up. Hey, thank you all so much for being here with us. And Ben and I will see you tomorrow. Same time, same place, same station. So until tomorrow afternoon, this is Craig Crossman hoping that your hard disk never becomes floppy. We'll see you tomorrow.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye. Woohoo! Yeah, that too.
10 seconds. Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.